What's going on, guys? It's your boy Cash, and it's time for the first, proud to say, first M.F.O episode on a game that I have beaten. I don't think that we've done this before. Most of the time we only have done first impressions and things like that. So it's really cool now to see what it's to try to do a review on a game I've beaten from start to literal finish. Well, the main finish, because who knows, some games have like multiple different endings. So if you guys are interested to know about some Scarlet Nexus and how I felt about the game, we will start off with a non-spoiler-esque kind of review, and then we will go into a very spoiler, more detailed review. So without further ado, Skidamarinky think you do, let's get into it. Alright, so we're starting off with just the basis of what the game is, just in case that people are clicking on this video before watching a playthrough. But I will link my playthrough in the description, so if you guys want to watch me play it, you guys can do that. Now, Scarlet Nexus is about a game about the two main characters, which is Yurito Sumeragi and Kasane, I think Randall, technically would be her last name. I'm not going to spoil that. This is the non-spoiler part of it. So pretty much they're joining I guess like a government, I want to say government security, but I guess the better way to say it is like they're joining the army of that world, and then it is to take out these monsters. The monsters are called others. So what's happening in the game is that you kind of start off as very reminiscent of Final Fantasy VIII, where you're kind of joining some type of organization to fight stuff. And I say Final Fantasy VIII because it kind of reminds me of that, is that eventually that whole system kind of goes south. You're doing missions, they're sending you out on missions, and then all of a sudden you get swept up into something completely different. And that's kind of the same thing that happens in Scarlet Nexus. Now, you have to, unfortunately, which is one of my gripes with the game, you do have to pick who you want to use, Yurito or Kasane, and then you go down their path. Now, I have mentioned in my playthrough that I first looked at Yurito's gameplay to see how I would like, if I even wanted to play the game in the first place. Now, watching that playthrough, I started to notice when I started my Kasane's, it might get confusing, when I started her playthrough, I started to realize that there are certain things that is exclusive to his gameplay that you will not see when you're playing the other. So that's going to be one of my gripes. So I'm going to go more detail into that when I go do my spoiler version, but that was one of my gripes with the game, because not only do you have a separate team, a whole separate team, depending on what side you're on, you're also missing certain story details that they kind of tell you. Like when I played my story, it's like, oh, by the way, XYZ happened, and they kind of just like dabble it on you. Meanwhile, if you have picked the other character, you actually got to go through that entire experience and get more of a well fleshed out version of those events. And I think that that's very important when you're trying to tell a full narrative story. Also, if I want to know what happened on the other side, now I have to do another full playthrough of the other person. And I just was like, I don't really feel like doing that. I guess for some people that adds replay value, but for me, it's like I already technically know what happened. I know how the game is structured, so I know that you guys told me what happened on the other side, but I didn't get to see it. I missed cutscenes, and in some cases, you miss certain enemy types, and you might not see them until later. And then even worse is that some bosses are on the other side that you did not get to experience. So that would be my first gripe against the game. And then I'm just going to try to talk about gameplay overall. I think the gameplay is pretty good. I think that there is a little issue of the lock-on system. The lock-on, at least for Kasane, when I would lock on, she has knives. She's psychokinesising knives and stuff like that, so she throws them, but sometimes it's kind of rough, or at least for me. I did start off playing on the PC, and then I switched the controller, and I'm trying to like hit things with especially the triangle button, or the triangle on the PS4 controller, and I'm trying to hit stuff, and sometimes she will actually attack in where she's facing, the character's actually facing, and not the locked on target. And that sucked because there's certain moves that I would want to do, especially the triangle move is how I got my psycho gauge back. And if I was missing, because she not only does she might not be in the right direction, she also does a step back when she does it, and I would just be missing, and then I'm like, oh, I need gauge, and it was kind of a nightmare. But once you get kind of used to the combat, I think it is nice and it's fluid. You're able to chuck multiple things around you, especially the L2 triggers, which are like more of a cinematic thing. If you use those, usually it's like either you're gonna kill something or like weaken it very harshly. And I think like, oh man, like that was like probably some of the coolest stuff to see, like I guess the developers ideas that they could think of when there's always something around, like, oh snap, let me get that pipe and then smack them around with it. Let me take that chandelier, spin it, and you know, start having the chandelier. Or my favorite overall was the surfboard. Using something as a surfboard. I think that all that stuff was really cool, and I think that that was really fun gameplay, especially when you get later onto the game where there is more to do, and the more you remembered on how to use stuff, the quicker stuff looks. So it looks like a very fluid scene. Like it's like you hit that, throw that, hit that, swing that, shoot that, hit that, use that. And you know, especially once you increase the bond of your team members, then they start doing stuff, and then the game just becomes super fluid, super fun. And that is what I would suggest. If it's, I know it's a high price tag, but I definitely think that if you're waiting for the game to go down in price, that it's definitely a game to look into, especially when it's cheaper. Maybe you don't feel as bad that you bought it, so then you could play the first playthrough, the second one. I think that the game is definitely in line for a Scarlet Nexus 2, or at least a very good DLC down the road. I don't think that they should leave the game in the state that it ends on. This is the no spoiler section, but I do think that there was enough to make a second game, and I think anyone that finished this game, especially, I don't know how the sales or whatever it was for the game, but I definitely think that those people deserve more of a finish, because there's definitely some more that needs to be addressed by the end of the game. And that's all I can pretty much say without dropping the juice, and I want to drop some juice. So you guys got a couple seconds to go check out the playlist if you want to see me play it, or go watch someone else play it, or pick it up yourself. Like I said, I think it's a great game. I think it was really good. But the non-spoiler section is going to go a little bit deeper into my gripes about the game. So, you guys got a couple seconds? Deep breath, close your ears or open them up. All right, I think that was a good enough time. Now, okay, so like I said, that one of the gripes, so I'm gonna use like I said, Kashine's playthrough. So one of the bigger things that happened in the game was obviously Naomi getting turned into an other. Now I watched Yuito's playthrough, and Yuito's playthrough, when that event happens, you actually fight Naomi as an other. And I went through the entirety of Kashine's playthrough, and I never did that. We never fought Naomi, obviously, because that's her sister. They probably didn't want to cross the streams. They didn't want to have you fight your sister, or she probably would have never did it, yada yada yada. But at the same time, not playing the other side of the story was kind of annoying to me. I really felt as though that they should have had it to the point where you did that one fight, then it cutscenes, and in the game's format, the way that the game was actually formatted, like with the manga style stuff, you know, that they easily could have had it that you went this, and then you could have been like 5 minutes later, or in another area, and then you do Kashine's, and then you go to Yuito's, because the full story would have been, it would have honestly extended the game much longer. That's one thing, the game would have been much longer, but at the same time, I think it would have seemed more fuller by playing it out. And if you skip a lot of stuff, I think that, and that's the next thing that we're going to be talking about, the questing system. If you skip a lot of things, which I think I decently skipped some things, you actually, you know, you can fly through the game. I think I did a lot of extra bond stuff. I tried to listen to everything, but if you were just trying to play the game as just like, let me just get the most optimal thing, I think you would have ended up with a way less time investment than I put into the game, and you would have enjoyed it more. Again, like I said, if they just join both storylines and put them in together, so you switch back. The other issue with that is like for like using Shidan, who is the lecture guy, right? Definitely was a really pivotal character. And Shidan, I think I have Shidan and I have Kyoko, who does the duplication. Now my issue was like, then I had a enemy when I was near the ending of the game. I had the enemy, and it's like I realized that if I had Hanabi, who is fire, she can instantaneously blow up this enemy. Meanwhile, I didn't have the option to really do that because I didn't have that character with me during Kashine's playthrough. I think that would have been nice to also see, like, to have you go through one area with one team, and then, like I said, you go to the other team and it's like, oh, they deal with it this way. I think it would have been really cool. And then the finale of it is eventually the entire team, you have access to the entire team. You have not only access to Yuito's squad, you also get access to Yuito. And I'm assuming on the other side, when you're playing on Yuito's side, eventually you get access to Kashine's stand, and you're like, oh my god, I can use this duplication thing, I can use this electricity to stun. And that's when the game, in my opinion, just becomes exponentially better. The game is just so much fun, so much fluid. You have so much thing to do. The game, for the most of the game, was kind of weaning you into how to use each power, what enemy is affected by each power. Oh, I have to use stealth for this one. Oh, I have to use hyper velocity. Oh, I have to use this, the fire. And now you have all access to these abilities because you have every single character technically on your team at the same time. And they did a really good job of making you feel like you have access to every single power. And not only that, you have to probably use them, every single power, to get the enemies down quickly enough that you don't get overwhelmed. And I think that was just phenomenal. I think that the mid to late part of the game was just literally the best, because not only one, even at the point where you're playing with one team, your characters level up, and then they have the assault visions and the combo visions, and like the stuff you're able to do just feels great. And I think that a game like that, or any game, needs to give you that feeling and somehow hold on to it as long as possible. When the player feels like they're in so much control and there's a lot to control, it feels good. And I think that that's what people might miss out on if they don't stick with the game, because maybe they couldn't get through the first couple hours of the game, but it just opens up so well. Next I wanted to talk about was the questing, and I've said this a lot of times in my playthrough, is that the questing was a little bit We've realized that the side quests seem to be really weird, like the rewards for them did not seem worth the effort. I maybe should have mentioned this in the non-spoiler aspect of it, but it's more about the reason why I didn't like the side quests is because of the Bond episodes. The Bond episodes were how you got closer to people, but the issue is that the questing was so bad, and the Bond episodes were kind of seemed like side quests anyway. I think that they should have had it that those were the side quests. And then some Bond episodes had fighting, some did not, and I think that would have been a really good way to just had both of them fused together, so the side quests weren't by some random civilian, and then you're running all over the place. Again, you're split into two different squads, so you don't know when you're going to be back at certain places. And what was the point? I still have not had any reason, and feel free to tell me if there was any actual reason to go back and do all the side quests. What is the bonus? I would love to see a video of me saying like, oh bro, if you would have did all the side quests, you would have unlocked this secret XYZ. So the side quest system just seemed absolutely kind of trash, and it was completely forgot about. Not that it was that bad that it was trash, it just made you not want to engage into it unless you wanted extra healing items, or I'm assuming maybe you got the visuals, cosmetics maybe in some of them, but it didn't seem worth it at all. And the Bond episodes seem great, and that's gonna lead me into my next thing, which I definitely did not want to spoil, is the whole Bond thing. How you level up stuff was very not, it wasn't really taught to you or showed you in a proper way. I know you can give them presents, which I love that system, right? You give them a present and you see it. Like you see them playing with it, you see them using it. I think that was phenomenal. That was a great integration into the system. That also, like the visuals that will be in the cutscenes, I thought that was amazing to see that. But my only issue is that I never knew how much more to give them. Do I have to go out and fight with them more? Since I wasn't doing side quests, I had no idea if it was more common to have maxed out certain bonds with certain characters, because I brought them on a bunch of side quests to go find a certain monster, which the game did provide to you, which I did like. If I really wanted to go find a monster and fight it multiple times to unlock something, I could do that. But was that how they leveled up? Was it easier to give them presents? How when you talk to them in the hideout, they don't really like give you multiple lines outside of if they're gonna level up or something like that. So I feel like maybe if there was a gauge, or if there was something that, if you give them this, it automatically happens, something that at least had, pretty much let me know really what I'm getting into, right? I think that was just the kind of a small gripe at that. Like I said, still like the game. And last but not least, the last thing that I really want to get into is the actual storyline. I think the storyline kind of started off really rocky. It was a little too anime, and it kind of stayed a little bit too anime, especially when you talk about Yuito. Actually, no, Kashino was a little bit annoying too. But Yuito was just too trusting. Like, certain stuff would happen to him, and then he'd be like, yeah, man, I trust you now. I'm good. And then Kashino just kind of stayed as that, what is it, the tsundere? Or whatever. Like, she didn't even like people, but it was just like she was just like so cold-hearted and let's be honest, very annoying. Yuito was just overly trusting, and maybe I feel like I'm more annoyed with his character because I didn't play as him to kind of see his character responses to certain things. That could be true. But and then we're going into the whole story, which if we can figure out the story, so the government was corrupt. There's about 3 different forms of government in the game, and they're all corrupted, and it all has to do with the others, the other particles, the extinction belt, which when we find out was made, not made, yes, it was made from the moon. So pretty much that the people from Earth then go to the moon because Earth is starting to turn into a shithole. Then they go to the moon and there's too many people there, and then there's, you know, all of a sudden, what did they call it? It wasn't extinction belt, but I think it was the Kunan Gate. I'm kind of messing up now, but pretty much the other situation happened and they were getting split, you know, from the Earth and the moon. They were having other problems. So the people on the moon who had better technology pushed them down. They tried to go back. Some people went down back to the Earth, and then they kind of like put the extinction belt to kind of like lock them into the Earth, so no one knows what's happening on the moon. And that goes into what happened. So pretty much the whole story is about what we're doing on Earth. Now we're trapped there pretty much from the people on the moon because they wanted it to be that way anyway. But the whole question is, have they kept that up on purpose for about 2,000 years? And now that we destroyed the gate and the belt all in one fatal swoop, how is the moon doing? And that's kind of where Kasune's storyline kind of picks up or ends at the end of the game, is that she's going to go to the moon, and a couple of the people agree that they're going to go with her. Yuito is going to stay and try to fix the government because they're corrupt. So it's more or less of like Yuito's aspect I kind of don't care about. I don't think that that's too interesting. He's going to try to fix the government. He's, you know, pretty much the savior of the world, even though I don't think that some of them know that that was the case. But Kasune's point, it seems like it would be a decent, like I was saying in the non-spoiler, would seem like it would be a decent DLC or a form for Scarlet Nexus 2. You could even have that she goes there first and then calls Yuito to, you know, through the SAS system or brain drive talk, whatever, and it says he comes along too, and then they can do the same thing, 2 separate storylines about how they're gonna fight what's on the moon. They can even do more enemies and things of that nature. So I think that the game has a lot of potential to at least have a second version of it, even if it's not as good as the first. I do think that they need to resolve that because it seemed really interesting. But the game also has an anime out, so they might just resolve that via the anime, and then you'll never actually see it in game form. Maybe it's not in the budget, or maybe it, you know, again, if it doesn't sell well, they're not going to invest into bringing out number 2 if the first one didn't do that well. So I think that is all of my gripes about the good old Scarlet Nexus. I do think, like I said, I wouldn't necessarily say that, hey man, pick it up right now, you're missing out, you're gonna miss out on the game of the year, stuff like that. I don't think it's game of the year based on some of the stuff that I've said. I did sound like I was complaining more than I appreciated, but I did appreciate and like the game a lot, especially towards the end. But again, I think that if you're just wanting to experience and play the game for yourself, wait till it goes on a sale. I don't think it's a buy now kind of game. I think it's definitely 100% a buy when you think it's a little bit more affordable, based on the stuff that I said in here. If there's certain things, like if you're a big side quester and I'm telling you, oh man, you're not really gonna want to do it unless you look up a video and see that it's worth it. No. It's really about if you like the gameplay, I would say, and you don't mind a slowly developing story. The story kind of takes a little bit while to get up there, and then eventually starts hitting you with twists and turns every couple seconds, and it's like bang, 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 not seconds, but you know, every couple minutes or so in the hours, and it's like bang, 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 and then now you start to see like who's the main villain and things of that nature. And I think that at that point, you know, you really get sucked in. You have a bond with the characters, you have your team, you have your certain combos, you have your leveled up version of the character. So I think that that's where the game kind of gets real spicy, and that's where it's really worth it. But can you get to it? Can you stick through the Scarlet Nexus? And I was hoping for a name drop too, like, so I don't even know. It's probably like some type of something I can Google why it's called Scarlet Nexus, or maybe I missed that completely. You know how every game usually name drops themselves to a certain degree? I don't think they ever said Scarlet Nexus once. This isn't Metal Gear, I guess. So hopefully you guys enjoyed, and of course, YFOs in the comment section below. Let me know how you feel about Scarlet Nexus. For those that played it, did you enjoy it? Did those that watch me or watch someone else play it, how did you feel? Of course. And for those that just are basing their opinions based on my review of it, how do you feel about the game? Do you think that it's a good game or a bad one? Do you be like, nah, I gotta watch it now, this is crazy? Or do you think it's like, I'm not touching that game with a 5-foot pole? I can definitely see both sides. Definitely see both sides, but I am very curious. Next game up is going to be Monster Hunter Stories. I'm starting to start uploading that as well, and it's just going to be pretty cool to go from a very action-oriented game to a turn-based game and see how that works, not only on the channel, but just how I feel about it and things of that nature. So I'm hoping that you guys enjoy the ride as we are having some fun here on the Kashino. But just remember that every day at the Kashino is your lucky day, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.